may be related to their vaccination. They would then be brought to the hospital and they would then make to other doctors the same allegation that they'd already discussed with Dr. Wakefield. So that was the first way that this research was rigged. The children were selected, the parents' stories were crafted, and then the second stage of the way that the study was rigged is that the individual cases of the children were altered before they were published. What was needed if you're trying to launch a lawsuit over a product, whether it's an automobile or whether it's a vaccine, what you need to do is to establish a number of things. You need to establish that it caused some damage to somebody. You need to show how that damage occurred, give some kind of plausible explanation and some kind of time connection. And that's what this paper did. But what they needed was to establish a new syndrome, some kind of new medical condition. Well, the child receives the vaccine. Well, what harm did it do? They needed to establish that these 12 children all had something in common for the lawsuit. So what they decided upon, that these children overall, by and large, had what they called regressive autism. It's a kind of autism where the child appears to be developed perfectly normally, they gain language normally, normal relations, but then they start to go backwards. The idea was that these children had, firstly, a bowel disease, because the doctor who was behind all this was a bowel specialist. You know, if he'd been a dentist, it would have begun with tooth decay, but he was a bowel specialist. So the children had a bowel problem and they had regressive autism. This was a new syndrome. What he had to do was to go through the original 12 cases and change crucial aspects of their history. So in some cases, children were showing signs of their problems before vaccination. Well, that had to be polished up. Some of the children didn't have any kind of bowel problems. Well, so that had to be just finessed slightly. Some of the children didn't have autism at all. After Wakefield's original allegations, and he didn't just make them in a single paper, he then went on to campaign, calling on parents to boycott the MMR vaccine in favour of single shots. He was saying that parents should ask for individual measles, mumps and rubella vaccinations separated by a gap of a year each. Something that really he just made up to assist a lawsuit. After that, vaccination rates started to plummet. We saw the return of measles. We saw children starting to die again from measles in the UK, which otherwise would really have been an eradicated disease. What then happened was the lawsuit in the background, where parents who were involved in this lawsuit, who were hoping to win millions of pounds in compensations. MMR became one of the biggest stories in Britain, certainly the biggest medical story in Britain, for the best part of a decade. Dr. Wakefield made the fatal mistake of suing me for libel as a way of trying to shut down the investigation. He made the terrible mistake of suing me for libel because I then got access to these medical records. And there was a day when I was sitting in my lawyer's office reading these medical records, and even as I was doing that, Dr. Wakefield's own lawyers were scurrying to the High Court in London to discontinue the litigation against me. And the moment they did that, the medical records were taken away from me. But I'd read enough to know that when Dr. Wakefield's disciplinary hearing came up before the UK's General Medical Council, I should be there to listen to the evidence, because a lot of the evidence was the same medical records of these children. And so through the course of those proceedings, I was able to reconstruct the medical records of these 12 children and establish that for not one of them was there a plausible connection between the MMR vaccine and what Wakefield claimed to have found, this new syndrome that he called it. So the whole thing was a scam. In February 2004, I published a long report, a page 1 report in the Sunday Times of London, which revealed that Wakefield had in fact been paid to create this vaccine scare, and that the research upon which he had founded his claims was in fact dishonestly executed and unethically carried out. We had vaccination rates plummeting, parents in large numbers refusing vaccination on the basis of the science that was alleged to have established that there may be a risk. And people greeted it with absolute astonishment to realise that the thing had been really cooked up by lawyers who were hoping from the outset, and before they'd even really got any evidence that there was any problem with the vaccine, they were hoping to sue drug companies. And I think really the end of the vaccine scare as it's perceived in Britain was in February 2010, and that was when Dr. Wakefield, the man who started it all off, was found by the United Kingdom's General Medical Council to have acted dishonestly and unethically. And the charges which were found proven against him included 4 counts of dishonesty and 12 counts involving the abuse of developmentally challenged children. His research was found to be dishonest and found to be unethical.
The medical journal BMJ is calling his study more than just bad science. Its editors say it is, quote, an elaborate fraud that has done long-lasting damage to the public's health.
And I think at that point, parents in the UK finally could see what it was all about. And when someone, as Dr. Wakefield has now been found to be, is found to be dishonest in their science, then I think parents can understand that some of the stories they've been told about the safety of vaccines and the dangers of vaccines alleged really have to be looked at again in a new light. We go way back to the beginning, you know, he tried to prove his theory. The only problem was his theory was wrong. And rather than simply accepting that it was wrong, he set out on this path of persistent alteration and manipulation and dishonesty, which has taken him to the point where he's now lost his license to practice medicine. If I hadn't investigated Andrew Wakefield, he would have arrived in the United States, as in fact he did arrive in the United States, as a man of impeccable reputation, someone who had come from a very prestigious medical school, who had carried out research published in very prestigious journals, and he would have gone on the circuit of litigation in federal court, and he would have gone on the media circuit as someone who's immensely plausible, immensely charismatic and charming, and he would have inflicted the most colossal damage on vaccination in the United States. The thing about this man is that he's a charlatan.